Hi, everyone. Welcome back to part 5 of Confessions of Another Place and Time from 1985, True Story from My Life. And when we last talked, we had Charlie and I had just gotten together and we're getting ready to go on our first outing together. I don't want to call it a date, but it was sort of like a date. And this was a huge step for really both of us, but especially him. We went to a local park and just hung out together, walked around, enjoyed the sights. That's a park called Holiday Park near here, and at the time it was quite the gay hangout. I mean, there were a lot less places for gay men to hang out, and so this happened to be one. And so we walked around, we got the lay of the land. He had never been there before. I had, just for various things with friends, and including well, lots of different things. So Charlie was really amazed to see all these different guys, however many it was, and we also were commenting on who we thought were attractive or was attractive. So he did finally ask me a question that was really important at the time. Is he said, "Rand, are you afraid of getting AIDS?" And I said, I hesitated a bit, and then I said, "Sure I am, but I'm not playing around a lot, and I am not. I'm playing safely. So the more I know about it, the better it can be, the safer I can be. In other words, at some point we sat on a booth and we got kind of close, and it was a really nice time just to get to know each other and ask questions and talk. And that's what this was mainly about. And I have to say, I did admire his great legs, and I told him so, and he kind of chuckled at that. I mean, this was all so new to him, and he'd only, I think in his mind, he had explored some of this stuff, but this is his first time talking about it on these phone calls and this park outing we did. So I think the important thing was that we spent those 2 hours planting the seeds that would ignite feelings and grow to much more that summer and the next year. And we talked about going out another time, and it was a great start. So we went back to the meeting place. I unloaded his, or helped him unload his motorbike, and we stood there for a few minutes and before parting. And he said, "Did you expect anything from me today?" I said, "No, not really, but I wouldn't have minded it." I mean, in fact, we both laughed, and I think he knew at some point there would be something more between us. I certainly hoped so, and I thought so at that point. I was thinking, the thing with Bill Thomas is not really working out. Bill just doesn't seem interested in Charlie, and I was so thankful for that. And Charlie was kind of getting to the point where he was over Bill and trying to get Bill's attention, I think. Um, and, like I said, it just never got off the ground between those two. And then I said, because I honestly feel Charlie would have been receptive if I had tried, just to kiss him or hug him or something. Maybe not in a public place, but I mean in general. I'm not sure of that, but I would have loved to. So that night I went out with my best friend at the time, Portia, told her all about it. We were she was as happy for me as I was, and just so glad, and gave her more hope that her and Bill could work something out. I don't know if much ever came of that. Not that I'm remembering or aware, but certainly gave her hope at the time. So another person that came into the story at that point was Mark Hooper. Now, I mentioned him earlier. He's the one guy at our high school who everyone pretty much assumed was gay, knew was gay. He was the most out person there, and I don't know exactly how, but you just knew. And so Portia, of course, being the gay male magnet that she tended to be, I mean, it seemed like every guy she hung around ended up being gay or bi or something. She somehow became friends with him. They may have been in the same grade, I'm not sure. And, that's how I eventually met him at some point that summer. And we got to hang out a time or two. And then one time they called and they wanted to see if I'd like to go downtown with them or to a gay bar. And at the time, I wasn't able to go, but another time when I was asked, I was able to go, and so we went, and we ended up going to the bar called OP's around here, our place, which is now called Greg's, our place. And here's some of what I said. Um, Mark and I felt so much at home, and we had such fun being together, and so many men at the bar, all masculine gay men, it seemed. I even talked to a few. Many were new, many were, or men were all over, and some were openly kissing. It was an eye opening experience for me. I enjoyed very much. I definitely wanted to come back. So, Mark introduced me to several people he knew, and it was a worthwhile trip for me that first time to get to go to a gay bar for the first time. And I don't know exactly how old I was. Oh, actually, I do. I was 18 at the or 17 at the time, something like that. And of course, I had let Portia know about how that went. So that ended up being important just because I had developed over a little bit of time, somewhat of a friendship with Mark Hooper, and I told him about what was going on with Charlie. Remember, Charlie had asked me for his phone number earlier, as well as Bill's, to try to get Bill's number. He thought, well, maybe Mark Hooper had it. Well, we don't all have each other's numbers, so I don't know if he did or not. But on July 16th, my phone rang, and it was Charlie. And that was unusual because usually I called him, and we never talked as late as it was. So I know he must have really wanted something. The conversation itself ended up being very surprising. My mom sat nearby and could hear my end, so I had to be careful of what I was saying. Mom certainly didn't know anything about Charlie or any of this. But this call was really important. The gist of what he said was that he wondered if I was still determined to get with him or have him as a boyfriend. And his voice made it clear that he wanted that. And I was thrilled and tried not to show that for my mother's sake. I assured him I did want that and planned for us to be together. He knew how much I loved him at that point. I mean, we had talked about it, I had said it. I don't know if I said I love you, I'm not sure, but somehow I indicated that. Maybe I did say I love you at some point. He knew how I felt, though, very clearly. Um, One thing to consider is I'm sure for the first time in his young life he had someone who felt like this about him. I mean, to my knowledge, he didn't have anyone who had ever loved him like that before. I mean, obviously, parental love and family love is different. So that's not what I'm talking about. Um, and, someone who wanted to be with him as well, not just love him, but be with him. And one of the issues that honestly came out of this was that we're talking about pretty young people here, and I think I was older, and I was more ready for, a sort of dating relationship or something like that, and going out, let's call it. I don't know that he was, but he was willing to try it. At that point, it seemed like. So he asked me to call him back when I was able to talk more, and the next morning I did call him. And this time I was alone. I told him my thoughts about going to Mark Hooper's house to hang out because I had talked about it with Mark, and he had said that'd be fine. You can come. My father, who he lived with, works during the day, so you guys can come over and hang out if you want. And he would kind of make himself scarce or go somewhere. So I really appreciated that. I don't know why I couldn't have just brought him back to our apartment, Charlie, but for some reason I didn't want to do that first time. So I called Charlie and I told him all this, and I said, um, I really want to have some alone time with you tomorrow. In other words, in a house, in private, not out in public at a park. And he knew what that meant, and that he asked me to. So is tomorrow the day that I'm going to get together with you or Mark? And I was like, Mark? No, you're not going to get together with Mark, not if I have anything to say about it. So, no, Mark was not in the picture as far as that. He was just his house with his father. He was hosting, and he wasn't going to be involved in anything else. And so when Charlie asked that, I knew he was therefore willing. He's like, okay, that's fine. But he asked, which I thought was actually a good thing. And I did what I said was, if it's meant to be, it'll happen. I didn't want to force anything, and I wasn't there to force myself on anyone. But it was my hope that he would feel the same that next day, and that things would work out, and we would finally be able to at least experience some time together intimately and see if it was meant to be or if it was going to continue. So I definitely wrote about that in my journal that night. And I hoped that I would be able to get to sleep because I was really excited about things to come. Well, I did get to sleep at some point, and I was also had a dream about Charlie and me, and maybe Robbie was in it too. Um, I'm not sure about that, but in the dream, Charlie was swimming in a creek or a lake or a pond or something that I wasn't swimming in, and turned out he was swimming naked. And when he came out, I helped and I gave him a towel, and that's about where the dream ended, unfortunately. So I'm not sure what happened after that, perhaps. Um, but here's one of the things I said: Charlie's willing and wanting and so agreeable. Hopefully, my dreams of last night come true tomorrow, because obviously I knew there was more to the dream than just him getting out of that lake and me putting a towel around him. I knew down deep the moment was close at hand, and the next morning I woke up very ready to go get him. We had set up a pickup time of 10:30 at a local bowling alley parking lot, which was not far from. It was sort of in between him and I. We both lived obviously in the same school district, and so not that far apart. I could tell when I got him, picked him up. I mean, he was nervous, and I had to reassure him. He didn't know what to expect. I didn't either, and I told him we would see what happens, but at least we were going to hang out again. Which is, if all we did was hang out, I would have been okay with that. That's not what I wanted. I wanted more than that, but I would have been okay with that because I just loved spending time with him. At any point, he could have said no, though, and I would have respected that. Like, no, I've changed my mind. I don't want to go to Mark's. No, I don't want to hang out there alone. Anything like that. Um, but from all he said and all he was doing, he was very willing. After we hung up, I called Mark to confirm. This was when I was still wanting to get him or waiting to get him. I was worried that something might go wrong, first thing Mark told me was, oh, by the way, I have a friend who's over here with me. And I'm like, what? That's not good. Now I've got to get rid of two people, not just one, out of the house. Mark assured me it wouldn't be a problem and said they would both leave when we got there after, a little bit. So I drove over, I picked Charlie up, and, maybe I was sort of quiet for a little bit, and he looked over and said, don't get quiet on me now, Rand. I laughed and tried to make small talk as we drove about the 10 minutes to Mark's house. We got there, and actually, the friend opened the door. He sat down, and now Charlie was the shy, quiet one as I introduced him to those two. I tried to find out what the latest was about when they were going to leave, but they both seemed occupied getting dressed. Mark had just gotten out of the shower. He came and sat down for a minute with a towel around his waist. Uh, Again, I think maybe he was trying to give us a bit of a show, and it really did make Charlie a bit more nervous, I think. So finally, we got them out of the house, left, and Charlie and I were finally alone in a indoor space. That was the first time, actually. And so he was sitting on the edge of the couch watching MTV playing on the TV, and I came and sat next to him, not like immediately next to him, but just on the couch, and he practically jumped. He was so like a nervous cat. Um, but we were sitting there, and I got closer and closer, and then we knew it was time. So the bottom line is his wonderful, beautiful legs led to my excuse for putting my hand on his legs. And then, from there, it went from there. And the next thing you know, we were having an intimate moment together on the couch, and I happened to look up for a second, and by the way, on MTV playing was Annie Lennox or the Eurythmics. Sweet dreams are made of this, and boy, could I definitely agree with this. This was definitely a sweet dream of mine finally coming true. So we were there on the couch, having some good times for a little while, but the idea was to utilize one of the bedrooms. So I asked him to go to the bedroom with me, and he did. We both went together, I mean. And Charlie got undressed, and I probably helped him. And, things happened. I'm not going to go into details, but because it's very private, and I don't want to talk about that kind of stuff. But I just want to give you the idea of the fact that it happened and that we had a great time together. Um, and also, it was a first experience for him, I believe. Well, certainly a first gay experience. And he seemed to really enjoy it. I know I did. It was not my first gay experience, but it was my first experience that was intimate like that with someone I really loved. So that certainly makes a difference. So we finished what we had been doing, and we sat or laid there for a while, and then we had to get up and get dressed because we knew Mark and his friend would be back soon. Plus, I think one or both of us had to eventually that day get to work, probably me, and let's see. I drove Charlie back to the bowling alley. When we arrived, I helped him unload the bike. He was ready to go home. This time, I think he was just riding a regular bike. I would have taken him the rest of the way, but that's how he wanted it. He looked over at me and said, "It's been fun and interesting. Thanks. I'll talk to you later." I agreed, and I told him it had been fun, and I was glad we had that experience together. We exchanged goodbyes in the parking lot, and he took off with a wave. And, it just confirmed that I was really in love with this young guy. I wasn't sure how he felt. He never used that word, and I didn't expect him to. This was all new to him, and he was pretty, like I said, quite young, so I don't think he was ready to talk about love, and that's okay. I felt like I was. It's different for me or it was different for me. I was okay with whatever it was at this point and hoped that he would feel more later. So Mark tried to get more information out of me in the car because I think he went with us while we were driving to get some lunch. I told him it was private, but we had a good time. I thanked him for letting us use the house or his house. And boy, what a sense of fulfillment that after 6 months of this letter relationship with someone he thought was another person, a female person, and then finding out who it really was at the mid-May. Now here we were mid-June, and we had progressed that far. So it just meant so much to me. And at that point, when you think about it, later that year in late August, or I think it was, I was going on to college. I started college. Charlie was going back to our high school, and he was going into the next year, of course. So we only had about 6 or so weeks of school left at that point, or sorry, of summer left, and school would be starting. But unfortunately, we weren't going to the same school anymore at that point, of course. And I say unfortunately only from my perspective. It might have been a good thing because I don't know how Charlie would have acted around me or wanted, he certainly wouldn't have been out. And I wouldn't have been either at that point with everybody, but some people, as I said, already knew at school. So we had a really great time on the phone and in person several more times in the next couple weeks. Um, when I started talking to him again, he didn't seem like, oh, this is awkward or anything like that. In fact, he was fine. He wanted to get together again like the next week. So we did. We got together. This time we went to my apartment clubhouse, played pool, and then we went back. And this time we just used my apartment. Like I said, I don't know why we didn't do that the first time. And we had another intimate encounter. It was even better. It was more active with both of us. So it was wonderful. And for the first time in my life back then in the summer of 85, I was having a sexual relationship with someone who I actually loved. And that was, like I said, intense and wonderful. So we had a great time together. And, I would tell Portia about us getting together, but of course I didn't go into any details. She didn't need to know that. And she didn't ask. She respected the privacy. But Charlie and I parted that day knowing we had a special bond and that we would be getting together again. Now, one thing that was coming up was that his family was going on a trip August 1st that I didn't know about at first, for whenever, I don't know when I found out, but I didn't know that long before it. So unfortunately, I was going to have to say goodbye to him for 10 days of our wonderful summer, and that was really hard. Um, so I wish that hadn't been the case, but it might have been good too because we didn't want to burn out quickly or something. I was a little concerned with that we'd have a few good times and then that would be it, but it wasn't quite like that at all. So when Charlie got back, that's about the time we got together another time, and this time I decided to take some pictures. not sex pictures, but just pictures. So I brought a camera and I asked him if it would be okay. He agreed to it, and I just took some posed pictures. I remember I love photography, if you didn't know that, and so these were outdoor pictures. I still have them to this day. And then I had Mark Hooper take a couple pictures, or two or three that were left on that roll of film, of us together, and just again posed with clothes on. So nothing dirty, nothing X-rated, I should say. So before we knew it, it was time to go back to school. And for me, like I said, college. And Charlie called me the night before I was going to start college for, of course, the first time in my life, and wished me well and told me to have a good day. He said he'd be thinking about me, and it meant a lot. And it was also a fun and relaxing conversation. We said goodbye, and he said, "Good luck tomorrow." And it was a special moment from the young man that I loved. The summer of '85 ended, but the story between Charlie and I did not. It wasn't over. We would always have that time together. Um, so I went back to my old high school one time early that year to pick up my yearbook, and I just had to leave a letter in his locker for old time's sake. Of course, now it wasn't from the mystery person, it was from me, and it was just my way to kind of put a cherry on top of that Sunday. I reiterated my love for him and hope for the future. It certainly was a hope worth having in my life at that point. Um, and so that's where I'm going to end today. And I'm going to wrap up next time with probably a shorter video, just telling you what happened after that and how that next year went. Because we definitely had some great times together. I wouldn't say that we were dating at that point. We were seeing each other on occasion because our lives kind of we're not on the same path anymore. When you're in college and someone's in high school, even though we're in the same city, so we connected somewhat, but not as much as I would have liked. And regardless, I still love Charlie. I'm sure there's a part of me that still loves him to this day. And I want to tell you more about him today, which at least what I know, because eventually his family moved out of state. So, okay, everyone, thanks so much for those of you who have stuck with this story. I know it's been kind of long, but to me it's worth it, and I want to tell the story. And I don't care if 25 people were watching or 2,500. I want people to know about this young love story from the mid 80s. Everyone, take care and have a great week. And I'll talk to you next time for the conclusion of Confessions of Another Place and Time.